everybody. This is TheWhisperCorner. A couple of years ago, I made a video where I went through a list of 100 books to read before you die, and I made a mistake, and there wasn't 100, there was 115. And I'm going to go through the 82 books that I read since then. These were the initial 33 books that I had read in my previous 38 years of life, in no particular order. I'm saying that because these are in particular order. To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Expectations, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, A Tale of Two Cities, Life of Pi, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, A Game of Thrones, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Catcher in the Rye, Lord of the Flies, Dracula, The Da Vinci Code, War and Peace, The Book Thief, A Christmas Carol, Macbeth, Frankenstein, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Catch-22, Ulysses, Heart of Darkness, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Little Prince, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Holy Bible, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So those were the 33 books that were left. And below here I have the books. Now let me just zoom in a bit and I will explain the font differences. So the ones which are just plain writing, they're just books that I read on the list. The ones that are bold are the ones that I would recommend, that I really enjoyed. And the ones that are underlined are the ones that I would definitely recommend. They're one of my, probably count as my favourites. I've just noticed that I didn't underline Gone with the Wind, so let's just put a very wonky line in there. So the order in which I read these books goes across the ways because I'm awkward like that. So I started off with The Raven, The Wind in the Willows, The Count of Monte Cristo, an absolutely brilliant book. A really, really good book. I would recommend it to anyone of any age group. Little Women. What can I say about Little Women? It's funny when you get a memory from a TV show from the 90s. It sort of ruins the book for you. There was an episode of Friends where Rachel was reading The Shining because it was Joey's favourite book, and Joey was reading Little Women because it was Rachel's favourite book. And at the end of the episode, they spoil the book for each other by giving away an ending. And I was about 100 pages away from the end or so when I suddenly remembered that this was the book which Rachel spoils for Joey, and I remembered the exact line. Utterly annoying for having a memory for pointless details. Then there was Of Mice and Men, Pride and Prejudice was the first book from Jane Austen on the list. I don't know how to put this without sounding like an old, chauvinistic old man, but I always figured the likes of Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters, those were books for women. But with Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, Rebecca, Persuasion, Madame Bovary, I realised good books are good books. I really enjoyed Pride and Prejudice. I'd never seen the TV shows, so, the TV adaptations. So, after Pride and Prejudice, we have The Old Man and the Sea, Alice in Wonderland. Yes, it's the first one in italics. And there's only, I think, 3 books in italics here. Those are books that I didn't like. It wasn't so much in Alice in Wonderland that I didn't like the book. I just didn't like Alice. It seemed to be every time Alice said something, my inner monologue was, "Oh, shut up, Alice." So, you've Alice in Wonderland. And then the sequel, which isn't on the list, but, it's on different lists. Alice Through the Looking Glass. I didn't bother reading that. Then there was Hamlet. I remember telling someone at work that I was reading Hamlet, and his response was, "Do you understand it?" And I said yes, because I'm not stupid. Sarcastic heaven. Next up we have Anne of Green Gables. Just a really nice book. I enjoyed it. Next up we have SlaughterhouseFive. Then I read Fahrenheit 451. Followed by I was going to say the first in the Russian books that I'd read, but I had already read War and Peace. Really enjoyed War and Peace. War and Peace is a monster of a book, but in a very Philistine sort of way of putting this, which, it's a Kevin way of putting this. Whenever War and Peace was finished, it was like a soap opera was over. I'd spent so long reading it. It was well over a month to read War and Peace. But you just got into all the characters. You knew all the families, you knew the history, you knew what was going on, and then it was over. And it was almost like withdrawal. Say if your favourite. Imagine if Game of Thrones had a good ending and then it was over. Something like that. So the brothers Karamazov, I think that was Dostoevsky, I don't think that was Tolstoy. And then after the brothers Karamazov, I carried on the Russian theme with Crime and Punishment, which I really enjoyed as well. I just seemed to really enjoy the Russian reading. Followed up by Night, a story about the Holocaust. Then Animal Farm, Brave New World, which I enjoyed. Then The Giver, The Great Gatsby, The Road, A Wrinkle in Time, And in case you're wondering who the authors are of some of these books, I'll put the link for the list down below so you will see where they're from and who the authors are. The next one with italics, 100 Years of Solitude. I would qualify this with, I wouldn't exactly say I didn't like 100 Years of Solitude. It was just really hard to read. There was just a lot of dense prose. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation. There was just pages and pages and pages of just dense writing, which, for someone who's read Ulysses, you think, sure, what's the big deal? But it was hard going. I followed, it's a bit of a funny 3 in a row there. You have the difficulty in reading 100 Years of Solitude, and equally the difficulty in reading Midnight Children. It was by Salman Rushdie, I think. Not saying it was a bad book, but just again difficult to read. And in the middle of those two, Charlotte's Web, classic children's story. Then we had Romeo and Juliet, Madame Bovary, David Copperfield. I'm a sucker for Charles Dickens. I've read maybe 6 or 7 of his books now, maybe more. David Copperfield is a really long story. It's one of the bigger Charles Dickens books, but just a really, really good read. Then The Story of My Life by Helen Keller, 1984, On the Road. And then There Were None, which is a book by Agatha Christie. Moby Dick. It's one of those books that's sort of famous for being hard to read, being famous for starting and stopping. But as far as I can remember, it seemed to be every alternate chapter was about the story, and then the other chapter was about how boats work, or how whaling works. I spent a lot of time Googling what certain words meant as regards ships and boats and sailing. I'd say if you were a sailor or you had a good maritime knowledge, you wouldn't have spent as much time as I did looking words up. But all in all, really good books. Obviously, they're all really good books because they're on this list. Then we had The Diary of Anne Frank, The Secret Garden, Siddhartha, The Grapes of Wrath, another really good book. I think that was Steinbeck. I think that's John Steinbeck. It is. I know because sitting beside me here I have another Steinbeck book which I'll go through. Grapes of Wrath. Then there was Truman Capote, In Cold Blood. We had another Jane Austen book, Persuasion, Ender's Game, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Just a really interesting, really good book. It's probably the only book on the list here. Well, no, probably that and In Cold Blood, which isn't fiction. It's sort of telling a story of something that happened in real life. It's the story of cancer research and where the cells came from, which are used to study cancer. Spoiler alert, they came from Henrietta Lacks. then I read Beloved, then The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Just a really, really good book. Story of betrayal, friendship, murder, more betrayal. I do remember whenever I closed the book over that I said to myself, wow, that was a very good book. Next up we have The Phantom Toll Booth, which is more of a children's book. And then I had The Secret Life of Bees, The Scarlet Letter, and then we come to this trilogy. I'd never seen the movies, but I really, really enjoyed the first Hunger Games book. I think I read it in maybe a day, maybe 2 days. I'd bought all 3 of them, so I had them ready. Catching Fire, I enjoyed it. And then we have the italicized Mockingjay, which was the closest I had come at that point to quitting a book. It was just depressing. The main character was crying and obsessed and crying and depressed and thinking about everything that had happened in the first 2 books and a bit more crying. But I got through it. So next up there was Jane Eyre, which I really enjoyed. Where the Sidewalk Ends, The Kite Runner, and then the first of the books that I have sitting here beside me, we have East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Steinbeck's famous saga of the Trasks and the Hamiltons. East of Eden portrays 2 families whose histories are deeply intertwined in rural California in the earlier years of this century. Adultery, murder, the conflict between brother and brother, and father and son are all contained in this panoramic sweep of this unforgettable tour de force, an instant bestseller that later starred James Dean in the film produced by Elia Kazan. East of Eden remains a classic of modern literature. So then, after that, I read The Help, and The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. And we had Atonement. Atonement was a really, really good book. Really enjoyed it. The Time Traveler's Wife, which I have here as well. What I did was the books that I really enjoyed, I held on to, because, well, the odds are I might want to read them again someday. The books that I'm not going to read again, I just left into a cancer charity shop. This is the extraordinary love story of Claire and Henry, who met when Claire was 6 and Henry was 36, and were married when Claire was 22 and Henry 30. Impossible but true, because Henry suffers from a rare condition where his genetic clock periodically resets and he finds himself pulled suddenly into his past or future. In the face of this force they can neither prevent nor control, Henry and Claire's struggle to lead normal lives is both intensely moving and entirely unforgettable. And apparently, according to the Times, it's wonky, sexy, incredible. So that was The Time Traveler's Wife. Then there was The Odyssey by Homer. Watership Down. Watership Down was a really, really good book. It's sort of dense, but plenty of conversation, so it's easily read. Fiver, Good Sense, Danger, Something terrible was going to happen to the Warren. He felt sure of it. So did his brother Hazel, for Fiver's sixth sense was never wrong. They had to leave the Warren, and so a small band of rabbits began a long and perilous journey. And you think it's just a child's book, but it's really tense. Watership Down is stunning compulsive reading, winner of the Carnegie Medal and the Guardian's Children's Fiction Award. As I'm looking through this list, I'm just thinking how long ago I read a lot of these books. And it might seem as if I'm getting down here to the bottom of the list, but I was also working off a different list, so there's other books that I've read as well. And whenever I finish that list, I'll do another one of these videos. Let's see, The Odyssey, Watership Down, Anna Karenina. That was another Russian book. I believe that's Tolstoy. It's another, even though I've got it down here as a book that I really enjoyed, it was one of those books where, it was that thick. Whenever I finished, I left it into a charity shop. The Handmaid's Tale, Rebecca, and then the book I will read again, in fact I might read it again soon, John Irving, A Prayer for Owen Meany. It's the book that I would currently classify as my favourite book. Simultaneously horrifying and absurdly funny. 11-year-old, let's see, there it is. 11-year-old Owen Meany, playing in a Little League baseball game in Gravesend, New Hampshire, hits a foul ball and kills his best friend's mother. Owen doesn't believe in accidents. He believes he is God's instrument. What happens to Owen after that 1953 foul is both extraordinary and terrifying. At moments a comic, self-deluded victim, but in the end the principal tragic actor in a divine plan. Owen Meany is the most heartbreaking hero John Irving has yet created. All I will say about the ending of this book is I screamed. I'm not going to say what I screamed, but I screamed. So, Prayer for Owen Meany, The Princess Bride. Not as funny as the movie. Rebecca by... No, I can't remember who Rebecca's by. Rebecca. Sorry, I've skipped a line. Rebecca, Prayer for Owen Meany, Princess Bride, Outlander. I really enjoyed Outlander, and Outlander is part of a series. So I might get started on that at some point. The Colour Purple, Cutting for Stone. It's another very good book. I have it here. Forbidden Love, Family Secrets, and a Country in Turmoil. Marion and Shiva Stone, born in a mission hospital in Ethiopia in the 1950s, are twin sons of an illicit union between an Indian nun and British doctor. Bound by birth, but with widely different temperaments, they grow up together in a country on the brink of revolution, until a betrayal splits them apart. But fate has not finished with them. They will be brought together once more, in the sterile surroundings of a hospital theatre. From the 1940s to the present, from a convent in India to a cargo ship bound for the Yemen, from a tiny operating theatre in Ethiopia to a hospital in the Bronx, this is both a richly visceral epic and a riveting family story. So I'd really recommend that. It's a really good read. Next up, after Cutting for Stone, we have Middlemarch. Middlemarch was another one of those books that I was put off by, mostly because it was thick. It seems stupid maybe, but my method for working through these books were get the thin ones out of the way first. It wasn't read the best ones, because they're all meant to be good. It was read the thin ones and get them out of the way. Middlemarch, really enjoyed. Water for Elephants, really enjoyed that book as well. The Poisonwood Bible, Memoirs of a Geisha, The Things They Carried, The Stand by Stephen King, The Good Earth, and we have The Pillars of the Earth. It's another one of these books. And again, you can see, after what I just said, you can sort of see why I left this one towards the end. Set in the turbulent times of 12th century England, when civil war, famine, religious strife, and battles over royal succession tore lives and families apart, The Pillars of the Earth tells the story of the building of a magnificent cathedral. Against this richly imagined backdrop, filled with intrigue and treachery, Ken Follett draws the reader irresistibly into a wonderful epic of family drama, violent conflict, and unswerving ambition. From humble stonemason to imperious monarch, the dreams, labours, and loves of his characters come vividly to life. The Pillars of the Earth is without doubt a masterpiece, and has proved to be one of the most popular books of our time. And I would agree with that. I'd really thoroughly recommend that book. Pillars of the Earth, Wuthering Heights by Daphne du Maurier. I really enjoyed that. Lolita, The Glass Castle, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Celebrating Silence, and The Thornbirds. Really enjoyed Thornbirds too. And then the last two books that I'd left in the list were two of the biggest books. Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Took me 3-4 weeks to read it, and I really enjoyed it. I've never seen the musical, never seen the movie, so therefore everything that happened was new and a surprise. I learned a lot about the French Revolution. You learned a lot about France, basically. I'd really recommend that. And then finally, the last book on the list, a book that I finished this week, just over 1,000 pages. We had Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I've never seen the movie, so everything was new to me. Set Tomorrow is Another Day, set against the dramatic backdrop of the American Civil War, Margaret Mitchell's magnificent historical epic is an unforgettable tale of love and loss, of a nation mortally divided and a people forever changed. Above all, it is the story of beautiful, ruthless Scarlett O'Hara and the dashing soldier of fortune, Red Butler. So, there you go. So, those were the 82 books from this list, from the previous video, that I'd read in just over 2 years. I'd recommend anybody to do it. You know, if you think you can't read a book, just try. Sit down, read a chapter, next day read another one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Give the video a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and click